If you're an investor in Bitcoin, XRP, Solana, Dogecoin, or even XLM, then I have a major warning because a large market move is on the horizon. As we narrowly escaped a World War III, oil prices rose and then crashed in the same day. Crypto markets crashed yesterday only to pump really hard on the fact that Iran was about to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, which it did not. And then it went and notified Trump with an early notice about some bombs they were going to drop, which would not actually harm anyone. No lives would be lost and nobody would be injured. And now Trump is calling for peace between Israel and Iran. And this could be very positive for markets, but you're still going to want to watch out because we're not out of the woods just yet. Even though Trump put out an official statement saying that there will be a complete and total ceasefire between Israel and Iran, markets loved this news. And even Bitcoin pumped nearly 8% on the day from 98,000 on the low up to $106,000. One thing's for sure, it has truly been a very interesting and volatile year. But what happens next will affect your portfolio. So we're going to be covering all of this, the price action on these cryptos that we mentioned in the title and the beginning of this video. We're also going to be covering the Federal Reserve and their recent statement on Bitcoin and crypto, alongside this very cryptic message or tweet from Arthur Britto, who's one of Ripple's co-founders, and he broke nearly 14 years of silence. There has been a lot of speculation among XRP investors on what's really happening behind the scenes. And by the way, a move on XRP is arguably going to be very healthy for a larger move in the general altcoin market, considering XRP is one of the largest cryptos and altcoins by market cap. And really quickly, before we dive into this video, if you haven't had the chance to yet, head on over to Bull Runners HQ and enter our weekly $100 worth of XRP giveaway. This week's winner can be you. Last week's was I See Clearly, and all you have to do to follow through with this giveaway is follow the 3 steps. Number 1, follow us on Bull Runners HQ on this account in the pinned post. 2, like, retweet, and comment XRP. We do double verify that you've done all 3 of these steps, and each winner is completely random. And finally, you have to subscribe to our daily crypto newsletter. If you just go to bullrunners.com, you should see a page that looks like this where you can get your free ebook anyway sent directly to your inbox for the 23 secrets to becoming a crypto millionaire in our ebook called Altcoin Secrets. So if that sounds interesting to you or you want a chance to win that $100, head on over to the pinned post on Bull Runners HQ. And as always, my friend, if you're feeling blessed and bullish, comment 777. And if you're going to be the wealthiest person in your family tree, smash the subscribe button. Hello and welcome back to the channel, my friend. If you're new here, my name is Paul, and you can find me on Twitter or X at PauliDeFi, PauliDeFi. Markets rallied really strongly off the news that there was going to be a ceasefire deal, and many people believe that this was the last and final dip before we start to put in some new all-time highs on Bitcoin and the entire crypto market. So yet again, if you are a holder of Bitcoin, XRP, Solana, Dogecoin, and XLM, you're going to want to pay close attention to what I cover in this video, as well as the price action, because as you can see here, over the last 7 days, I should say, markets have been down and red. However, on the news, virtually everything that I mentioned has pumped and rallied pretty hard, putting in a new higher low and now a local higher high in a longer term intermediate downtrend, which we are going to cover. But first, we want to cover this news and then talk about some potential threats or things along the horizon that could cause you to lose a lot of money, especially if you're trying to enter with size now because you're FOMOing, thinking that this was really the bottom. And I'm not going to be the bearer of bad news or try to be a perma bear. I'm just not too confident that we really experienced the bottom. And if anything, this event just caused for a bounce or a retrace, and I'll cover why that is on the charts here shortly. So the first thing I want to cover is this post from Donald Trump as of today, where he basically states that Iran has officially responded, that 14 missiles were fired, 13 of those 14 missiles were knocked down, and one was set free because it was headed in a non-threatening direction. This was almost for Iran to save face and probably just prove to their own citizens that, hey, we're actually taking action and retaliating. Although if they truly did that, they would likely be obliterated by the United States. Most importantly, they've gotten it all out of their system, and that he actually wants to thank Iran for giving us an early notice. He's asking for peace in this situation. And so the actual updates goes as follows. This is what occurred earlier today and what we just talked about. Then in a later post, just a few hours later, and arguably like by the time you're watching this, late into the afternoon Eastern time the day before, Trump did announce that Israel and Iran are going to have a complete and total ceasefire. And so things are looking pretty dang good considering everybody was gearing up for war. And so the way that this is going to work is Iran will start the ceasefire, and upon the 12th hour, Israel will start the ceasefire. And upon the 24th hour, in under 24 hours, guys, an official end to this 12-day war will be saluted by the world. That is if everyone remains peaceful and respectful. But as we would know, more often than not, that things don't work out exactly as we plan, especially in acts of war or violence, or when someone was potentially harmed or killed. And there are a lot of tensions between Iran and Israel right now. So if for whatever reason anything were to escalate or things don't go according to the plan of this ceasefire, I think markets are likely going to sell off even more. Still, this is very positive news for the entire crypto market, alongside the fact that the Federal Reserve has officially removed the reputational risk factor that penalized Bitcoin and crypto. In other words, if a company is going to be involved, or better yet, a bank in the crypto sector and offer whether it's crypto services or just crypto to their clients through ETFs or even spot assets, the board has started the process of reviewing and removing references to the fact that this will ruin their reputation from all of their materials. And whenever they do something like this, it's basically giving the nod and the go ahead for banks and institutional players to offer crypto to their clients, and that it would be treated like any other regulated financial market, which is a very big pro for crypto. When you combine that with the Genius Act and the stablecoin bill that's shortly going to pass, things are looking really good in the long term for the entire crypto market and the cryptos that we mentioned. And now, speaking to this really interesting and cryptic text from Arthur Britto, the very first tweet and post he's made in 14 years, people started questioning and wondering why he made this tweet after not tweeting for a total of 5,890 days since May 8th of 2009. I was back in high school the last time this guy tweeted. And what's really interesting is that he did it 589 plus a 0 days from the last tweet. And people are saying that it's a subtle nod to the fact that $589 is coded into XRP, and that at some point in time, XRP is going to hit that price. Now, this is an old meme and something that the community has really bit into, so much so that if you were to type in and look up Brad Garlinghouse, the CEO of Ripple, you can see that even he always and consistently follows only 589 people. So what are your thoughts? Is XRP going to hit $589? What does this cryptic tweet from Arthur Britto for the very first time in 14 years mean? Did he actually plan this? Does it point to the fact that they know something we don't? Now, before we get into the rest of this video and the technical analysis on those altcoins alongside Bitcoin, if you haven't had the chance to, head on over to altcoinpro.com. You can find the link in the description below. This is your bar none, best educational platform on the planet when it comes to crypto. We consistently have nearly 1,000 members paying monthly to be here. And the reason is because we provide all the right tools, training, and resources. We have a team of professional and dedicated DeFi researchers and crypto analysts that share tons of value constantly alongside our full library of all the past calls we've ever done and live calls where you can ask your questions live. And every single Tuesday, I host a technical analysis call alongside have a course to teach you step by step how to be a pro when it comes to looking at charts and making your own decisions. But if that wasn't enough, you not only get altcoin picks, you get DeFi yields, you get airdrop alerts. We also share with you our DeFi yield quick wins, which every single week we update and show you how to essentially put your crypto to work for you so you can have your membership completely covered by literally one thing. And just to give you an example, DeFi Mo, one of our very own, shared the lazy farmer and how to take advantage of this. Now, this might look and feel a little bit confusing, but he's showing you within a pretty wide range of 60% in a very safe manner, Bitcoin and US dollar, how you can earn 25% APR. In other words, with only about $4,000, if you were to get access to our yearly membership, you could have it completely covered with just one yield farm. And that doesn't include all of the other yield farms and how to take advantage of them alongside all of the other value that we provide. Again, the reason that we have members all over the world paying monthly to be here is because we provide the best value in all of crypto, and we guarantee that. And we also look forward to helping you earn your money back on just one of these yield farms, so that way all of the value is free. And if you don't within a period of 14 days and you're not 1000% happy, then just go ahead and ask for a refund, but literally have nothing to lose and everything to gain by at least checking it out. Go to Altcoin Pro. Now let's get back into the video. All right, I don't want this portion of the video to be terribly long, but I do want to do a bit of analysis. First and foremost, when you come over to a daily time frame on something like Bitcoin, you can see that our prior all-time highs, and really where we saw a lot of sell pressure before a breakdown to $74,000, was this range right here from $108,000 all the way down to about 106. This would be our resistance level, and as you can see here, not only did we break above for a bull trap not once but twice, but now we put in a new lower high, and now also we have some new lower lows for an intermediate term downtrend. So if I were to just take a trend line right here and drag it through, you can see that we have a decent amount of overhead resistance right here between 108 to 106, but we also have an intermediate term downtrend with a series of lower lows and lower highs, and now we're bouncing right back up into this range. So even a move up to 107, I would like to see it hold and actually break above this, what I like to call pivot point, and hold on at least a daily time frame before we're in any type of a major bull market scenario right away. That said, I am also going to practice patience and not enter here, and I'm arguably going to enter a few shorts up into this range because we've been actually bouncing around quite a bit on the 10 and 20 EMA, and now that 20 EMA has crossed over the 10 EMA, if I were to hide the Bitcoin chart, so you can see that this right here, this type of a pattern is actually relatively bearish. Even though the price is back above it, we are still below resistance, and if anything, this is just a very strong bounce on the fact that the Iran and Israel news seem to present something positive in the term of a ceasefire. That said, this is an intermediate term downtrend, and again, I like to bet with the trend, especially with this much overhead resistance, which leads me to want to be a bit more short. And by the way, Bitcoin has consistently been outperforming everything in the market, and that shows up in the dominance chart. As you can see here, Bitcoin dominance recently climbed just a few days ago back up to 65.9%, currently down to 65.28%, but generally speaking, ever since the bottom in I want to say 2022, right over here, November, Bitcoin dominance has consistently been rising and gaining against the entire crypto market, and that's just because markets are tired of altcoins. They've been exhausted by a bunch of pump and dump scams and meme coins. A lot of that money now is flowing into the biggest and the best, one of those being Bitcoin. And again, that's why it's 66% of the entire market. Now, taking this into consideration with things like XRP, Solana, Dogecoin, and XLM, if I'm slightly leaning more bearish on something like Bitcoin, then we have to take that with a grain of salt into all of these other altcoins, because Bitcoin is currently leading the market. How do we know this? Well, Bitcoin recently reached for new all-time highs, and while XRP, which is a very strong performer this year, has actually underperformed in that same time frame. As you can see, going back to May 22nd, Bitcoin put in a new all-time high. Going back to May 22nd on something like XRP, XRP failed to put in a new all-time high. XRP's all-time high came in January. And so yes, it is a laggard now relative to Bitcoin and has consistently seen sell pressure right around this descending triangle. So although XRP narrowly saved face by breaking down below the $2.05 range only to bounce back up, we are still in bear market territory, considering if we come back down into this range one last time in this descending wedge and fail to break above this trend line right here at some point in the near future, if Bitcoin breaks out, then yes, this is more likely to break out. But if Bitcoin breaks down and XRP comes back to 205, this is going to be a pretty large short, or at least a sell pivot point down to 180 and if not 150, because right now this would be like the 13th time XRP has touched back down into the 205 range without breaking for new highs. So the more that you touch a support, the less strong it becomes. It's kind of like knocking on a door. It's not the more it touches, the stronger it becomes. Actually, it becomes weaker. And the same would remain true on the upside. If you consistently touch a range once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, eventually it's telling you, hey, this thing is ready to explode to the upside. Well, right now, XRP is looking relatively weak to Bitcoin. And so if Bitcoin breaks down and XRP touches that 204 to 205 range, yet again, things are going to be looking kind of bearish for XRP in the short term, which for many investors is a really good opportunity. Buy those dips down to 176 to 180, all the way down to 150, which be our next support. And if you can see, when you zoom out on that 150 range, all the way back to 2021, this would be our next major range of support. From there, all the way down to about 115. Now let's go ahead and cover Solana. And by the way, I'm not saying that these scenarios are going to occur. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know what it looks like, but I tend to bet with the trend. Remember the old phrase, the trend is your friend. I found that Dow theory since the late 1800s consistently remains true and works extremely well as a theoretical approach to my investing in literally all markets, not just crypto. As you can see, Solana has been range bound going all the way back to March of 2024. We're already over a year and about 3-4 months away from that period of time, and Solana has failed to break above. It's actually been quite volatile. Failed to break above that $190 range in its latest move to the upside, and is now back down into the lower ends of the range. As you can see, it bounced right here on the Israel-Iran ceasefire news. However, with this new lower low right here and with this new lower high, if we're to touch the 125 range again, we're not only likely going back down to 100, but we're likely going even further to potentially $75 to even $65 on a breakdown. Solana, in order for me to feel healthy and confident that this thing is ready to break to the upside, I'd need to see a move above this trend line and arguably definitely back above the 185 range to say that this thing is in bull market territory. The problem with Solana is that it's very inflationary, even though it's one of the most used, if not the most used L1 in the entire crypto space, has a very strong brand, has a very strong narrative. At the end of the day, this trend is not looking too strong. Let's move over to something like Dogecoin. Dogecoin actually has far less room to break down than a Solana. As you can see, we did break out really strong going back into 2020, all the way into that all-time high in 2021 where it hit about 74 cents. Since that point in time, it's developed a lot of strength in this range right here between about 10 cents down to about 5.5 cents. So anything in this range is actually a pretty good time to accumulate something like Doge, because whenever it breaks out, it pumps extremely hard. As you can see, it did in March and yet again in November of 2024. Since that range though, and since that local high up to about 48 cents, Dogecoin has seen nothing but sell pressure and arguably looks weaker than a lot of other cryptos in the space, but that's totally fine because when it does explode, it explodes. All of these guys have a nice little downtrend in terms of their price action. You can see that this thing did not actually break to the upside as strong as something like Bitcoin or even XRP. So right now it sees a slight support right here at about 14.6 cents, and I can go ahead and put a line there, and you can see that aligns perfectly with these ranges right back here going into July of 2024, October of 2024. But if this thing breaks down below about 14.5 cents, we're likely going down to at least 10 cents, if not about 9 cents. And that is where I would be a bigger buyer of something like Doge, because at the end of the day, your risk to reward on something like this is actually pretty strong considering there isn't as much room to the downside. And so let's just assume you took a long position at about 12 cents even, right? Your downside could be, I don't know, 7 cents, but your upside could be a new high of at least above 48 cents and potentially back up to that prior all-time high of like 73.5 cents, which you can see is an 11-to-1 risk to reward ratio. That is a really, really big play. And that's just because we have so much support in these ranges down here. So in my opinion, a Dogecoin is actually a pretty good buy at any moment in time from 14 cents all the way down to 9 cents. Now, speaking of XLM, XLM is really interesting because it seems to do really well when XRP does well. But as you can see, in about November of 2024, it broke for some new highs, and I'll go ahead and zoom in there and auto that out. And then in January, it put in a new lower high while XRP was putting in all-time highs. So right here in November of 2024, all the way into about a month later or about 20 days later, while XRP was making its moves, so was XLM. They moved pretty much in tandem. And to paint this example really well, I actually pulled up the chart of XRP and overlaid it on the XLM chart. And as you can see, XLM actually rallied harder coming into November and actually topped out before XRP. Then it put in a second local all-time high right over here in December. XRP put in its local all-time high that exact same day, which is this purple line. They traded pretty much in very high correlation, but then you'll notice one thing really started to happen. They started to deviate. XRP pumped from a new all-time high for itself to the tune of about 500% going back to September of last year, while XLM put in a new lower high. So see this lower high? XRP had its high right here, put in a higher high. Since that point in time, and if you were to zoom in all the way to those highs right over here, you can see that XRP has held up a heck of a lot better, currently up, and let's just go ahead and really get all of that price action visible on the chart, up about 55.7% in that time frame, while XLM is down 53.8% for nearly a 110% difference. Even if you were to go to this all-time high over here coming into about January, you can see that XRP is down from that all-time high about 32%, while XLM is down about 50%. Major difference, and yes, they look correlated. You can see when one goes down, the other goes down. When one goes up, the other goes up. XRP just has better diamond hands, stronger holders, is arguably seeing more accumulation, and that doesn't mean that XLM can't perform at some point in time or outperform. It's just that from a longer term investment perspective, it seems that Stellar Lumens is not in the same ballpark as XRP, and that's simply showing on the chart. So yes, XRP has held this range, and I'm not saying it's going to break down anytime soon. We could see a lot more ranging for quite some time, but I would like to see it above the trend line. I would like to see it above 233, and arguably I would not want to see it below 205 unless I'm trying to buy more of a dip at 180 down to 150. But looking at the XLM chart with this relative weakness, I would also like to see it break back above its prior range high right here of about 33.5 cents before I want to accumulate it. Anything below right here at this seeming support of about 22 cents right here is going to be pretty dangerous because it has a lot of room to drop to the downside, potentially potentially down to at least 15 cents. And so really what you're going to want to watch out for right now is what's going to happen with Israel and Ukraine, and really focus on Bitcoin. If Bitcoin starts to dump for whatever reason, even if you don't hear news, it's likely because insiders are selling it based on anticipated news because they have better sources than you or I, which leads me to believe that a lot of cryptos are going to continue to dump. However, if this war is truly over within the week, then it looks like markets could actually find some underlying strength and then potentially break for new local highs, which could take us to new all-time highs on basically all of the cryptos that I mentioned on this video. But when it comes to what's going to actually perform pretty dang well, it's obviously going to be Bitcoin, it's obviously going to be XRP, and then potentially Dogecoin. But I would say Solana and XLM are looking a heck of a lot weaker when I actually look at the price charts. And by the way, if you want to join in on these live calls that I host and ask questions with me while I teach and train you on the charts in technical analysis, then be sure to join Altcoin Pro University. You can find the link in the description below for altcoinpro.com. Today, I'm going to be hosting a call here very shortly, and every single week on Tuesday at 4 p.m., I do the exact same. All these calls will be uploaded in the library, but this stuff is very relevant. And when you're on these calls, if you're not on them at the exact same time, sure, there's a lot of education that you can find in the recordings, but this stuff will help you make decisions now, which can not only save you thousands, but can make you a lot more. So thanks so much for watching this video. I hope you got some value. I hope you learned something new. Be sure to subscribe. And also, I will see you in the next video, my friend. Goodbye.